So, when you hear the term private label, what comes to mind? For a lot of people, it's still that generic no frills box on the bottom shelf. But that view is, well, it's completely out of date. In today's retail world, private labels have become this incredible strategic weapon. They're not just alternatives anymore. They're actually changing the entire power dynamic between retailers and the big national brands we all grew up with. This is really the playbook for how a simple store brand can transform into a powerhouse. All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with what this private label revolution is all about. Then we'll get into the strategic edge it gives retailers, but also, and this is important, the hidden costs and risks. After that, we'll look at how these retailers are actually building their own brand empires, and we'll wrap it all up with the one big strategic rule you have to follow to get it right. First up, the private label revolution. Now, this isn't just a story about cheaper products. Not at all. What we're really talking about is a fundamental power shift. It's about who controls the market and who has the customer's loyalty. And let me tell you, that power is moving away from the big manufacturers and landing squarely in the hands of the retailers themselves. For the longest time, the thinking was pretty simple, right? Store brands were the cheap stuff, the budget option you kind of settled for when you couldn't get the real thing. Well, that's the old view. The new reality? It's a completely different world. Retailers are now treating these products as serious strategic assets. They're not just copies. They're being engineered to offer value that's on par with, and sometimes even better than, the big national brands. And this really gets to the heart of the change in how we think as customers. That old stigma? It's basically gone. Choosing a private label isn't about settling anymore. It's seen as a smart, savvy move. People are actually proud to make choices based on how well a product works, not because they saw a flashy Super Bowl ad for it. It's a shift from being loyal to an advertisement to being loyal to actual performance. Okay, if you still have any doubt about the quality, this slide just completely shatters that myth. I mean, look at this. We're not talking about some mystery factories here. Costco's Kirkland Signature, which is a total powerhouse of a private label, gets its batteries made by Duracell. Their coffee? Roasted by Starbucks. And their French vodka is produced by the same people who make Grey Goose. So, C, this isn't about making a cheap knockoff. It's about partnering with the best in the business to deliver top-tier quality just under your own brand name. All right, so that brings us to the big question. How does all of this translate into a real strategic edge for the retailer? I mean, why are they pouring so much money and effort into this? Understanding the why here is absolutely crucial to understanding how retail works today. It really boils down to 5 huge advantages. First up, differentiation. If you're the only place that sells Kirkland Signature, that's a powerful reason for people to shop at Costco and not somewhere else. Second, you obviously attract those savvy, price-conscious customers. Third, and this is a big one, it gives you way more power when you're negotiating with the big manufacturers. You're not just their distributor anymore, you're also their competitor. Fourth, you have total control over the store. You decide what goes on the best shelves. And finally, the branding costs are way, way lower. Your store is the advertisement. And this slide shows the single biggest flip in how we shop. Think about it. In the past, the journey was, I want to buy Tide detergent, so I need to find a store that sells Tide. The brand came first. But now, the journey is often, I'm going to Target. Let's see what kind of detergent they have. The retailer comes first. That simple reversal completely changes the game. It gives the retailer incredible leverage to guide your final choice, and you can bet they're going to guide you toward their own brand. Okay, but it's not all sunshine and profits. This strategy is definitely not risk-free. For all those upsides we just talked about, there are some pretty significant hidden costs and challenges that come with jumping into the private label game. This is the necessary reality check. The first huge hurdle is what we can call the expertise gap. You have to remember, for most of their history, retailers were basically just distributors. Their job was to move boxes from point A to point B. But building a brand from the ground up, that requires a completely different set of skills. Product development, marketing, brand management. It's a different corporate DNA, and most retailers just weren't born with it. Then there's the incentive void. Here's what that means. When a retailer puts a big brand like Coca-Cola on its shelf, Coca-Cola often pays them for that prime real estate. They get what's called slotting fees and promotional money. But when you replace that Coke with your own store brand soda, well, that revenue stream just vanishes. So yeah, the margin on your own product might look higher on paper, but when you factor in the lost income, the actual hit to your bottom line might not be what you hoped for. And finally, there's a hard cap on your growth potential. Think about it. A brand like Tide can be sold in tens of thousands of stores all over the globe. But a private label like Target's Up and Up brand, it can only ever be sold at Target. Its growth is inherently tied to and limited by the growth of that one retailer. Its potential market is a fraction of a national brand's. So let's say a retailer decides to take on those risks. How do they actually go about building this brand empire? Well, when it comes to managing a whole portfolio of these labels, there are really two main playbooks that everyone follows. The first approach is called the umbrella strategy. This is where you use one single powerful brand name to cover a whole bunch of different products. You can do this by just using the retailer's name, like Trader Joe's does on almost everything in the store. Or you can create a totally separate brand, like Costco did with Kirkland Signature, and have that be the umbrella that covers everything from nuts and bolts to wine and cheese. Now, the complete opposite of that is the house of brands strategy. This is where a retailer creates and runs a whole bunch of different, distinct brands. Each one might target a specific type of product or a specific type of customer, and the absolute master of this approach is Target. They have something like 40 different private brands. You've got Good & Gather for food, Up and Up for your everyday essentials, and many, many more. This chart just lays it out perfectly. You can see the whole spectrum. Over on one side, you've got Costco, all in on that single umbrella brand, Kirkland. Then on the complete other end, you have giants like Target and Walmart, who are managing these huge, complex houses of brands. And then you have someone like Whole Foods, kind of in the middle with a smaller, more focused set of brands. It just shows there's no single right way to do it. It all depends on your goals. And this whole house of brands thing leads to a really interesting question, doesn't it? Do we, as customers, even know that we're buying a store brand? I mean, when you're at Target and you see Smith & Hawken patio furniture, does it even cross your mind that it's a Target-owned brand? Probably not. You just think it's a nice brand that Target happens to sell. And you know what? That ambiguity is often completely intentional. It lets the brand stand on its own 2 feet, judged for its quality, not for being a store brand. So, we've looked at this whole revolution, the massive advantages, the serious risks, and the different ways to build a portfolio. But when you boil it all down, what's the one thing that separates the winners from the losers in this game? It really comes down to one single strategic imperative. And this is it. This is the one rule to follow. Every private label should fulfill a specific purpose and delivering superior value to that segment. What this means is it's not enough to just be a cheaper copy of something else. That's a race to the bottom. A successful private label has to have a clear reason to exist. It needs to be aimed at a specific group of customers, and it has to be built from the very beginning to give that group something better. Better value, better quality, a better experience. Without that focus, you're just adding noise to the shelves. And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty massive question to think about. As these retailers get better and better at building their own brands, using all that customer data they have and their total control over the store environment, what does that mean for the future of the traditional manufacturers? What happens when your biggest customer also becomes your toughest competitor? That's the billion-dollar question that's reshaping the entire industry.